Most serial killers have to work for it. They have to find victims, gain their trust, cover their tracks. A doctor already has all of that. The victim comes to them, trusts them completely, and when they die, everyone assumes it was the disease. This is every doctor who figured that out, ranked by how long they got away with it. Case 1, John Harvey Cream, 1878 to 1892. Approximately 5 confirmed kills, 14 years active. John Harvey Cream graduated from McGill University in 1876. He was charming, well-dressed, and had a very specific problem with women who trusted him. His first known kill was a patient he was sleeping with. He gave her chloroform during a procedure she didn't need. She died. He blamed the other doctor in the building. It worked. He moved to Chicago. He gave a woman strychnine disguised as medicine. She died. Her husband was convicted and hanged for it. Cream watched the execution. He moved to London. He poisoned 4 more women, sex workers, with strychnine pills he told them were free medicine. He then wrote letters to Scotland Yard accusing other men of the murders. Scotland Yard investigated the men he accused. He was eventually caught because he couldn't stop talking about the murders to strangers. He would approach people on the street and describe the killings in detail. He was hanged in 1892. His last words were reportedly, "I am Jack the..." before the trapdoor opened. Nobody knows what he was about to say. Years active before arrest, 14. Case 2, Marcel Petiot, 1926 to 1944. 60 plus confirmed kills, 18 years active. Marcel Petiot was a doctor, a mayor, and a decorated World War I veteran. He was also, by the time he was caught, burning bodies in his Paris basement around the clock. He started small. A patient died under suspicious circumstances in 1926. Then another. Local police investigated him twice. Both times, nothing stuck. By the time World War II started, Petiot had developed a system. He told Jewish families he could help them escape Nazi-occupied France for a fee. He had connections, he said, safe passage to Argentina. They came to his house on Rue Le Sueur with their valuables, their savings, everything they had. He injected them with what he told them was a required vaccine for entry into Argentina. It was cyanide. He kept their belongings. Neighbors eventually reported a smell coming from his house and smoke rising at all hours. Police arrived and found the furnace going and approximately 10 dismembered bodies waiting to be burned. Petiot fled. He hid for 8 months by becoming a member of the French resistance. He was caught when he wrote a letter to a newspaper under a fake name explaining that the people he killed had all been Nazi collaborators. The handwriting matched. He was guillotined in 1946. He told the executioner to look away because this was going to be unpleasant. Confirmed kills, at least 60. He claimed 63 himself, all collaborators. Nobody believed him. Years active, 18. Case 3, Michael Swango, 1981 to 1997. 60 suspected, 16 years active. Michael Swango was described by colleagues as enthusiastic, eager, and strangely excited whenever a patient crashed. He was a medical student at Ohio State in 1981 when patients on his rotation started dying at a rate nobody could explain. 5 patients died unexpectedly over a single rotation period. The nursing staff filed a formal written complaint with the hospital. They described Swango appearing at patients' bedsides when he had no clinical reason to be there. They described patients deteriorating within hours of his visits. The hospital opened an investigation. A committee reviewed the cases. They interviewed staff. They looked at the charts. They concluded there was insufficient evidence and let him graduate. He became a paramedic in Illinois while waiting for a residency. Within months, his colleagues started getting sick, violently, suddenly, after eating food he brought to the station. Nausea, convulsions, one colleague temporarily paralyzed. They suspected food poisoning. Then they suspected him. One coworker secretly watched him through a window and saw him put something in the communal food. He was arrested. A search of his apartment found a detailed journal describing poisonings with obvious satisfaction, alongside a stash of arsenic, succinylcholine, and potassium chloride. He was convicted of assault, not murder, sentenced to 5 years. He served 2. When he was released, he forged his entire record, removed every reference to the conviction, fabricated transcripts, references, and employment history, then applied to residency programs across the country. He was accepted at the University of South Dakota. A nurse there recognized his name from a news story she half remembered. She wasn't even sure it was the same person. She reported it anyway. He was dismissed. He applied again. New York. Accepted. A background check eventually surfaced the conviction, dismissed again. At this point, the American medical system had caught him twice. Both times, the response was to quietly remove him and move on. No criminal referral, no national alert to other institutions. He simply stopped being their problem, so he moved to Africa. He worked at hospitals in Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Namibia over the next several years. Patients died unexpectedly on his wards. Colleagues reported concerns. In Zimbabwe, a hospital administrator wrote a letter to U.S. authorities warning that Swango appeared to be killing patients. The letter was filed. Nothing happened. He was eventually caught in 1997 trying to re-enter the United States. His visa application listed inconsistencies. A customs officer ran his fingerprints. By the time prosecutors finished, investigators had linked him to at least 60 deaths across 3 continents over 16 years. Every single one of them enabled by institutions that decided someone else's problem wasn't worth the paperwork. He pleaded guilty to 4 murders. He is currently in federal prison, no possibility of parole. He has never explained why he did it. Not once. Not to investigators, not to psychiatrists, not in any letter or interview. The journal they found in his apartment had a quote on the inside cover. "I love the sweet taste of blood. Years active, 16. Case 4. Harold Shipman, 1975 to 1998. 250 plus confirmed kills, 23 years active. Harold Shipman was the most trusted doctor in Hyde, a town in Greater Manchester. His patients genuinely loved him. He made house calls, something almost no GP did anymore. He remembered names, remembered birthdays, sat with families after a death, and explained everything calmly. He was voted the best doctor in the area by a local health survey. He killed at least 250 of them. His method never varied. A lethal injection of diamorphine, pharmaceutical heroin, administered during a routine home visit, always to elderly women, almost always alone. He would stay long enough to be certain, then alter the medical records to show a recent and plausible decline in health. A note about breathlessness 2 weeks ago. A mention of chest pains at the last appointment. Enough to explain a death, not enough to raise a flag. He did this for 23 years. He was investigated once before he was caught. In 1998, a GP named Dr. Linda Reynolds had been tracking death rates across local practices as part of a routine review. Shipman's numbers were an outlier. His elderly female patients were dying at a rate roughly 3 times higher than any comparable practice. She brought this to the local coroner. The coroner reviewed a sample of cases. The falsified records showed plausible declines. The deaths looked natural. The investigation was closed. 3 months later, one of his patients died. Her name was Kathleen Grundy. She was 81, healthy, recently photographed at a community event, and had just updated her will to leave her entire estate, several £100,000, to Harold Shipman. Her daughter was a lawyer. She found this unusual. She requested an autopsy. The autopsy found fatal levels of diamorphine in Grundy's tissue, consistent with administration within hours of her death. Police arrested Shipman and began pulling records. Then they began exhuming bodies. The pattern was always the same: the diamorphine, the falsified notes, the death certificate signed by Shipman himself. In some cases, he had called the family before they knew their relative was dead, because he had been there when it happened. One family remembered that when Shipman called to tell them their mother had died, he seemed annoyed that they were upset, like they were being unreasonable. The Shipman inquiry took 4 years and reviewed over 400 deaths. It confirmed 250 murders. The actual number, accounting for cases where records were too degraded or bodies too decomposed to confirm, is estimated at over 260, making him the most prolific serial killer in recorded British history by a significant margin. The inquiry also produced a secondary finding. The systems that should have caught him had multiple opportunities across 2 decades and failed every single time. Death certification was handled by the killer. Medical records were controlled by the killer. The professional body that oversees GPS received no statistical flags because nobody was aggregating the data. He changed all of it. After Shipman, the UK completely overhauled how deaths are certified, how GP prescribing is monitored, and how patient death rates are tracked. 250 people died to produce those reforms. He was convicted in January 2000. 15 counts of murder, though the scope was understood to be vastly larger. He was sentenced to life with a recommendation that he never be released. And in January 2004, The day before his 58th birthday, he hanged himself in his cell using his bedsheets. The timing was not accidental. Under pension rules, his wife would receive a significantly larger payout if he died before 60 than if he were simply imprisoned. He had done the calculation. His last act was financially optimized. He never confessed. Not to police, not to the inquiry, not in any letter or conversation. In the thousands of pages of evidence reviewed, there is not a single moment where Harold Shipman acknowledged what he had done. To the end, he maintained he was a good doctor. Years active, 23. The reason this keeps happening isn't that doctors are uniquely dangerous. It's that the entire system is built on trust. You trust the diagnosis, you trust the treatment, you trust that the person holding the needle has your interest in mind. And almost always they do, almost always.